Hello everybody. Welcome to Greeks and Romans Part 2, 1.7 From Forum to Courtroom. Today we are beginning with an example of a Roman declamation in our declamation happenings. The woman who was tortured by the tyrant for her husband's sake. The idea is to redact a Roman declamation in favor and against to this statement on the controversia. A wife tortured by a tyrant to find out if she knew anything about her husband's plot to kill him, persisting saying she did not. Later her husband killed the tyrant. He divorced her on the grounds of her barrenness when she bore no child. Within 5 years of marriage, she sues him for ingratitude. Let's start with the plaintiff, ingratitude uneda, exordium. Fathers of the jury, what Roman heart does not shudder at that very word tyrant? My client shuddered, yet she did not speak. Chains carved her wrists, fire kissed her flesh, but her loyalty stood unbroken. Shall such loyalty now be repaid with a writ of divorce? Let's go for the narratio. The tyrant suspected a plot upon his life. He seized the wife, seeking the husband's secrets. Under torture, she denied all knowledge and thereby saved the plot. Her husband slew the tyrant and returned triumphant. After 5 barren years, he repudiated her, citing sterility, and cast her from his house. She brings an action of ingratitude. What is the status? The status finitivus. What counts as ingratitude? Roman tradition. Seneca in De Beneficis teaches that gratitude is not discharged by silent profit, but by reciprocal honor. The husband's first duty was to protect the life that protected his. Equity versus bar law, the status legalis. Yes, a husband may divorce for barrenness, but potestas without pietas is tyranny in miniature. The lex Julia, de adulteris punish betrayal. Shall we reward fidelity with exile? Public utility. If Rome allows men to cast off women, who save the commonwealth from tyranny? Which wife will endure torture for state or spouse tomorrow? Civic security rests on domestic fidelity, acknowledged and honored. Justice of the forum versus private power. The husband profited doubtfully. He gained a kingdom of freedom by her silence and now seeks flesh lineage by her expulsion. This is no lawful economy. It's usury upon virtue. What would be the peroratio? Gratitude is a republic invisible rampart. To reach it is to invite new tyrants. For tyranny begins at home. Condemn this ingratitude. Restore the wife, or Rome would have slain the tyrant, only to enthrone injustice in every household. So the idea here is that you craft the declamation, status legales, the argumentatio, the peroratio, in the negative way against the wife. Okay, so let's continue with our chapter content about Greeks and Romans, which marks the finish of our Roman declamation introductory course by a wonderful professor, Mario Lentano. In some cases, the different sensibility of Roman rhetoricians in respect to their Greek colleagues emerge not so much in their different approach to the same theme, but, so to speak, ex silentio, in the sense that we can draw conclusions from the absence of a specific argumentatum in the Latin themes in respect to the Greek context. Such absences could of course be owing to the caprice of the manuscript tradition, which deprive us, we must remember, of almost 250 minor declamations, or to the partially of the preserved material. But at least in certain cases we can suppose that this absence is the result of specific choices on the part of Latin teachers, who consider some themes unfit for the cultural context in which they operate. Let's consider a single example here. In the division of questions written by Sopatros, the rhetorician, the case of a mother who kills her son in a gymnasium where he had sought refuge is presented. In killing her son, she violated a law that prohibits women from entering gymnasia, conceived in Greek culture as an exclusively male place. The woman who enters in a gymnasium should be punished by death. It should be permissible for mothers to kill their children without due process. A mother whose son was prostituting himself followed him with the intention of killing him. The son got ahead and took refuge in the gymnasium. The mother entered and then killed her son within the gymnasium. She is charged on legal grounds. The Roman world did not have any institution corresponding precisely to the Greek gymnasium. However, the motive occurs also in the Latin manuals. Quintilian, to exemplify the case of two laws that contradict one another, cite a law that prohibited putting statues of women in a palestra, along with that requiring the placement of the statues of tyrannicids in palestras or gymnasiums, when there was a case of a female tyrannicid. The incompatibility between the male-only space of the gymnasium and the tyrannicid gender is so strong here that it extends even to statues. When it is the mere image of a female figure that enters the space. But there is something else. In the theme proposed by Sopatros, a second law appears, entirely lacking Roman parallels. According to this law, mothers are permitted to kill their children without due process. To tell the truth, the Greek expression used by Sopatros, akritoi paides, does find an equivalent in the phrase indemnate liberi, sometimes attested in the Latin collections. But in no Roman controversia is this right even given to mothers. In text, where it occurs, a formula indemnatus liberos liceat uccidere does not even require a complementary term that explains for whom the right is recognized. In Roman society, the only ones who could exercise this right to kill are fathers, as you can recall from past sessions, and a law like the one mentioned by Sopatros cannot be found, if I am not mistaken, either in surviving Latin collections or in the rhetorical manuals. Finally, the Greek declaimers were generally viewed as more open to sordid themes, which state scabrous situations and involve the use of obscene terms and images. This attitude can be seen in Seneca's aforementioned Controversia 1.2, related to the famous woman kidnapped by pirates, handed over to a pimp, and now applying to be a priestess. A theme that lends itself very well to irony about a woman's claim to have maintained her chastity despite both her long stay in a brothel and among the pirates. In the final section of the controversy, where forensic examination often yields to digression and anecdote, Seneca briefly mentions a similar theme, that of the woman who accuses her husband of maltreatment following an unconsummated marriage. wins his condemnation, and then applies a priesthood. In that case, he recalls an unnamed rhetorician who had maliciously alluded to husbands playing nearby on the first night of marriage, out of respect for the virginity of their timid wives, adding that according to Mamercus Emulus Carus, the predilection for obscenity was learned from the Greek declaimers, who granted themselves every license, almost to exemplify that what he has just said. Seneca cites another controversy, in which a husband catches his wife in adultery, not with another man, but with a woman, reporting some rather salty utterances of Greek disclaimers, and concluding with a trenchant affirmation that some things are better left unsaid, with harm to the case than spoken with harm to modesty. Scholarly reconstructions of the theme alluded to by Seneca are not univocal. At base there must be the husband rights to kill his wife and her lover caught in flagrante delicto, according to the time-honored declamatory law discussed before. Here, however, the scenario is made more complex by the fact that the adulterous relationship was of a homosexual kind. It is possible, therefore, that the theme envisioned a problem of finitio, whether that is, the sexual relationship between two women could be defined as adultery, alluding to lesbian relationships. Marshall speaks of a riddle more obscure than that of the Sphinx, which states that where there is no man, there is no adultery. Alternatively, the case may deal with the status of the conflict between the legislator intention and the letter of the law, which regarding the husband's right to kill the lover only speaks of an adulterer and adulteress, or more often of adulterers masculine. In both cases, these are questions that are broadly addressed by extant controversy, but it is telling that the idea raised by Seneca remains entirely isolated, and that no preserved Latin declamation turns on themes of lesbian love. Remember that we are on our Via Appia road to Sophistopolis, where everything can happen. Thus we probably have one of the situations in which what conditioned the fortune of the declamatory themes was the ethical moral reservations that their subjects could possibly provoke. In this case, however, such reservations have a precise cultural manifestation, in the sense that they refer to tastes characterized as specifically Greek, even if they influence Latin declaimers as well. Seneca's views negatively and requiring distancing from. Furthermore, Quintilian, when he confronts a question of obscene terms in school themes, appeals again to pudor, and very precisely to what he calls Romani pudoris mos, traditional Roman modesty, an expression in which the adjective counts at least as much as the noun. We can conclude in this session by recalling other important differences between Greek and Latin declamation, in the choice of themes or in their formulation. The presence of controversy on the figure of the stepmother is much more abundant in Latin. Remember the cruel stepmother, probably because of the particular characteristics of the Roman familia and its related matrimonial practices. In Greek rhetoric, the conflict between rich and poor is loaded with political and ideological meanings, such as a linkage between wealth and aspirations to tyranny, typical of Athenian democratic reflection. By contrast, this aspect is almost entirely absent in our Roman Sophistopolis via Appia context. Greek declamation gives much space to historical themes, which in Latin constitute a very small minority. Moreover, Greek rhetoricians seem to focus exclusively on the age of Athenian hegemony, on confrontation with the growing power of Macedonia, and on the saga of Alexander the Great, whereas their Latin colleagues prefer events of recent history, even touching on hot and potentially dangerous political themes, as we reviewed on the part of politics and declamation. In our view, no convincing explanation has yet been given for this difference, but it has an important pendant in Plutarch's choices of Greek protagonists for his parallel lives. Lucia Passetti has recently illustrated overlaps, as well as different divergences between Greek and Latin declamations about poisoning, a theme that in the Roman context does not need to await school rhetoric before rising to the attention of judicial chroniclers and historiographers. Passetti has also shown how differently a philosopher is represented in Greek controversia, where he is almost invariably a positive figure of great individual morality, and in Latin texts, in some of which the practice of philosophy is seen as unrecognizable with traditional Roman mores. Regarding style, which is also a sort of identity claim, in Controversia 2.6, Seneca reports in Greek a sententia of Agoroitas of Marcel, and then adds that his declaimer expressed himself with rough technique, from which it was inferred that he had not been among Greeks, but with strong expressions, from which it was inferred that he had been among Romans. The juxtaposition between the refined grace of Greek and the less elaborate but more robust eloquence of Latin is certainly not an invention of Seneca the Elder, but the observation is very important. When Livy has made his Mucius Scaevola say that et facere et pati fortia Romanum est, he was voicing a trait of Roman identity, as we have seen the Roman tradition, the Roman morals, the Roman familia. In the Senecan ontology, the stress moves from action to speech, underlining that it is no less Roman, dicere fortia. Other aspects traceable to their respective cultural frames could be identified through further analysis. But from the evidence given so far, we can conclude that declamations, notwithstanding their widespread distribution and the circulation of themes, motives, and teachers from one side of the empire to the other, recurring to the way of Via Appia, never entirely lose their connection with the cultural context in which they were elaborated. So as you can see, the Roman declamation is joined with culture and the Roman familia, the Roman characters. They reflect an imaginary that was in large part shared, but also tends in some cases to articulate itself according to an easily identifiable national inflection. Set this, please practice. What would you do in the case of the mother and the gymnasium? Let's recall it. The woman who enters in a gymnasium should be punished by death. It should be permissible for mothers to kill their children without due process. A mother whose son was prostituting himself followed him with the intention of killing him. That was what kind of mothers, and also cruel stepmothers, remember. The son got ahead and took refuge in the gymnasium. The mother entered and then killed her son in the gymnasium. She is charged on legal grounds. What would be your declamation in favor of the son or in favor of the mother, or against the son or against the mother. Craft, research a bit, make some ideas, and go for your argumentatio and peroratio. Please share it on the comments. So said that, we have just finished our content and our introductory course on Roman declamation by Professor Mario Lindano, a great compendium of all the basics that we can see on Roman declamation. There's a lot more, like very specific aspects from each author, like Seneca, as we have reviewed, from Calpurnius Flaccus, from Quintilian. If you're interested in this kind of content for a second part course, let me know in the comments. I will be glad to share it with you. If you have any questions, ideas, how you can improve your declamation, your oratory, please send me a message. I will be glad to assist. This was lecturer B.A. Marquez Romo, and please start your journey on the Via Appia. Reflect on your declamations, on our Sophistopolis, our characters, our harsh stepmothers, mothers, sons, tyrants, pirates, daughters, and start crafting your own content. Thank you. Please have a wonderful evening.